What's up, Taiwan? I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin in the United States, where campaigning for the closely fought 2024 presidential election has wrapped up. Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and Republican candidate Donald Trump spent the last hours of their campaigns trying to sway undecided voters, both spending the eve of the vote crossing key battleground states that could decide the outcome of the election. Harris made her final pitch to voters in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. The vice president addressed crowds in Pittsburgh, expressing the importance of voting and reproductive rights.
So Pittsburgh, this is it. Tomorrow is election day. Tomorrow is election day. And the momentum is on our side. Our campaign has tapped into the ambitions, the aspirations, and the dreams of the American people. And we know it is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
Trump also spoke to an arena of supporters in Pittsburgh. The former U.S. president told the crowd that if elected, he would impose tariffs on China and Mexico over illegal fentanyl imports. He also continued attacks on the Democrats' handling of the economy and immigration.
Kamala Harris has delivered soaring prices and economic anguish at home, war and chaos abroad, and nation-destroying invasion on our southern border like nobody's ever seen before. She's actually a disaster. My message to Americans tonight is simple. We do not have to live this way. We don't. We don't. And we won't. We won't.
With polls still neck and neck, the race for the White House is too close to call. More than 80 million Americans have already cast their votes in early voting, and in-person polls will open in just a few hours. We have reporters on the ground across the U.S. Louise Watt is following the Trump campaign in Florida. But we begin with Joyce Tseng in Washington, D.C., where security is being ramped up amid fears of violence.
The White House, a symbol of American democracy, is under tight security with just hours to go until voters choose their next president. Barricades are up all around the perimeter to ward off any possible violence around these tightly contested elections. Earlier, elsewhere in the city, businesses also boarding up their windows. Democratic candidate Kamala Harris will be spending election night here in the nation's capital. In the final hours of her campaign, she was in the crucial battleground state of Pennsylvania in a last push to win over undecided voters. It's been a whirlwind run for Harris, launching it in record time after U.S. President Joe Biden unexpectedly dropped out of the race in July. Now, she's been clear on her pledges. She says she will cut down on the cost of living and protect fundamental rights like reproductive freedoms and be the steady hand at the wheel steering the U.S. through this critical time. Earlier, I spoke to Zach Cooper, a national security expert who has worked at the Pentagon and the White House. He says the U.S. is facing unprecedented challenges.
When Biden took office, there was no war in Ukraine. There was no war going on in Gaza. And, although Taiwan tensions were high, they're probably higher now than they were then. This is just a much more severe threat environment than it was 4 years ago.
And does Harris have enough foreign policy experience to handle the presidency?
We just don't know exactly, what she might do because she hasn't had this chance before. But I do think it's important to remember that she's had time both in the Senate and now as vice president to get pretty familiar with a lot of foreign policy issues.
Harris has warned that her Republican rival, Donald Trump, is, quote, unstable and a wannabe dictator, calling him a threat to democracy. Now, as one of the tightest races in U.S. history draws to a close, Harris is calling on voters to put country over party when choosing who to send to the White House. Luffy Lee, Andrew Ryan, and Joyce Tseng in Washington, D.C. for TaiwanPlus.
It's been a turbulent election campaign for Donald Trump. He's been the target of 2 assassination attempts, and there are accusations that a win for him would threaten America's democracy. Louise Watt reports from the venue where he'll be in just a few hours.
On election night, Trump supporters are expected to be lining this road because the man himself will be in sight here, the Palm Beach Convention Center in Florida. Why here? Because it's just a couple of miles up the road from his Mar-a-Lago beachside resort. In the 2 days before Election Day, Trump has been busy elsewhere, ramping up his rallies.
Hello, beautiful, beautiful North Carolina.
He and his vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, have been holding more than a dozen rallies in crucial swing states. Trump's messaging is simple. He says he'll be stronger on the economy, border control, and global leadership. He says he won't start any wars. In the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania, his supporters say they trust him on these issues.
And I'm supporting him because I know that trickle-down economics works, because when he was in before, we had gotten 2 raises out of the clear blue sky and a bonus.
We have a lot of politicians that, he doesn't have a filter, and I like that. Whether you like the guy, you have to respect the fact that he says what he feels. And he said if he says he's going to do it, it gets done. May not be pretty, but it gets done, absolutely.
Trump's opponent, Kamala Harris, argues he's a danger to democracy, given that he's threatened to go after his political enemies. Donald Trump has already won twice here in Florida, but on election night, all eyes are going to be on those crucial swing states. The result could be so close, it may take days to know who's won the presidency. Justin Wu, Ed Moon, and Louise Watt in West Palm Beach, Florida, for TaiwanPlus.
Join TaiwanPlus tomorrow as we bring you live election night coverage from Florida and Washington, D.C. A spokesperson for a fringe pro-China party has been prosecuted for allegedly accepting funds from Beijing. Zhang Mengchong allegedly received over $2 million from China to influence public opinion in Taiwan. His radio program and social media content allegedly tried to advocate for China and influence Taiwan's presidential election earlier this year. He's now being charged under Taiwan's anti-infiltration law. Prosecutors argue his program threatens the country's national security.
在其所主持之台湾向前走广播电台节目以及网络平台介入我国选举、罢免及公投等政治议题，影响我国民主法治之正常发展，严重威胁国家安全。
Zhang Shou was said to promote China's military while advocating for Taiwan's surrender in what is being termed cognitive warfare. The Justice Ministry says it has rescinded a proposal to increase fines for women who have illegal abortions after lawmakers and women's rights groups protested the changes. Candace Carranza reports.
废除堕胎罪，还我生育自主权。
Legislators and women's rights organizations are at Taipei's legislature to protest against a proposed increase in fines for illegal abortions. The Justice Ministry has proposed a change to the criminal code that would increase fines for illegal abortions from around $100 to $2,500. Groups here say there have only been 10 cases related to this criminal law in the last 10 years, so they're questioning why fines should be increased now.
所以，我们今天非常意外、讶异的听到法务部要提出修法来加重处罚。所以，法务部我真的要问，到底你们是从什么年代来的部会？这一种过时跟落后的思维，我们绝对没有办法允许。
Abortions in Taiwan are legal for pregnancies before 24 weeks, but women who are married have to get permission from a partner. These are restrictions people here say are harmful to women.
这个法律可能就将来会更方便这个先生去利用堕胎罪来控制这个妻子。例如说，想离婚的妻子，她如果不想生下小孩，那先生就会要挟说：好，我们必须在以不离婚的原则底下，我才同意你去堕胎。
Groups are also arguing that abortion in Taiwan should be governed by the Genetic Health Act alone and not by a criminal law. Scott Wong and Candace Carranza for TaiwanPlus.
Taichung's director of public transportation has been accused of sexually harassing several female employees.
借故抓住他的手臂，抚摸他的手臂，握手，甚至抠他的手心，甚至还对他说出看到你，我真的很痒，感受到深深的恐惧，他再也不敢来到这个办公场所上班。
Since 2021, 5 employees have filed formal complaints against Zhang Yingdang, whose office oversees the central city's metro and bus lines. City employees say the experience caused their colleagues significant distress, with one resigning as a result. Taichung Mayor Lu Xiuyan says Zhang has been suspended from his job and an investigation is underway. North Korea has fired a volley of short-range ballistic missiles into waters off the east coast of the Korean peninsula. The launches come just days after Pyongyang test-fired a new solid-fuel ballistic missile. South Korean security officials say they're monitoring the situation and are sharing intelligence with Japan and the U.S. Seoul's defense ministry earlier warned that the North would ramp up military activity to draw attention ahead of the U.S. presidential elections. A Chinese military aircraft that breached Japan's airspace in August did so because of a, quote, unexpected obstruction. That's according to Japanese media reports citing diplomatic sources. The explanation from Beijing comes just a week before leaders from the two countries are set to meet in Peru on the sidelines of the APEC summit. For more on the timing of China's announcement, Jaime Ocon spoke to Riley Walters, a senior fellow with the Hudson Institute.
Riley, with APEC coming up in Peru, some people think that China's reasoning for this incursion when they breached Japan's airspace, it's kind of to play nice ahead of this meeting with Tokyo. What do you think? Do you think this really was an accident?
Well, I think there's a few different ways to kind of understand their reasoning that it's an accident. The first, as you mentioned with the upcoming APEC summit, it could be to play nice with the new Japanese administration. The Beijing is still very diplomatic forward, so they like to at least try and make it seem like they're on a good foot with everyone. But the accident, it is hard to believe that the incursion in August was truly an accident. I think the fact is that there's just too much PLA activity going on. It doesn't really bring peace and security to the region. In fact, it does quite the opposite. And the Chinese really need to, I think, reconsider their priorities.
And how would you gauge current relations between Japan and China right now? Are there any obstacles to both sides engaging with one another?
I would say that Tokyo is getting a lot more skeptical of Beijing. Beijing itself is changing, of course. I mean, it's much more political. It's much more focused on security. It's much more, pushing away a lot of the values that the international community has. And so Tokyo sees this. Tokyo sees the military activity going on right across their borders, right? And so they're very worried. The difficulty for leaders, right, is that politics usually often means you have to play nice at these international conventions. It's not always that, they can have a stern talking to in front of cameras, because that'll just look bad for everyone. So it's a little bit difficult. I would say, though, just the underlying relationship between Tokyo and Beijing is growing, not more connected, but definitely more critical of the way that Beijing is acting.
That was Riley Walters, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these highlights from the renowned Havana International Ballet Festival in Cuba. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.
Pivotal election that will impact Taiwan and the world. Will it be President Harris or President Trump?
We are moving forward.
Make America great again.
I'm in the United States in the final stretch.
TaiwanPlus has you covered with exclusive reports from California to Texas and Washington to Florida. We'll be there on election night as America decides. Only on TaiwanPlus.